I'm joined now by Nina Schick. She's a policy analyst at Open Europe, a group that monitors the European Union. And I think your group originally was Eurosceptic, and now you're sort of somewhere in the middle and saying that the UK should stay within the EU. Is that right?
Well, we're pro-reform, and we don't say the UK should necessarily be in or out. We're going to reserve our judgment until we see the final package.
So this deal, Cameron has called it, saying that it would deliver substantial change he wants for UK's relationship with the EU. Do you think it does?
Well, the first thing to point out is that this is just a draft proposal. It's not the final deal. The final deal will come in 2 weeks' time once Cameron has met all the other 27 heads of the EU states, and then only will we see what the final deal looks like. There's a lot of detail that remains to be fleshed out. Of course, Cameron is saying this is a victory because he's at least got concessions in his 4 main baskets of reform. But, as I already mentioned, the devil will be in the detail. There's still a lot to play for until the rest of the EU agrees with.
So on one of the issues, I mean, the power to restrict benefits for new migrant workers for up to 4 years, as I understand it, that would, under this draft deal, a temporary mechanism. So what would happen when those restrictions ended? What's your thought about that?
Again, this is something that hasn't been clarified, and this is something that still needs to be negotiated with the other 27 member states. So we'd have to see what the final deal is in February before we could see what the mechanism is. The weakness in this mechanism is the fact that it isn't a permanent and binding mechanism. So Cameron's opponents would say that this is not strong enough.
And what about a lot of the Tory Eurosceptic MPs or Conservative Eurosceptic MPs have already said that the deal, not happy with the deal. Presumably, their followers or the people who listen to them won't be happy either, will they?
Well, I think that all the polls indicate that this is going to be a very finely balanced referendum. But those people who have already decided to vote in will vote in, and those who have decided to vote out would vote out no matter what the deal is.
So are we all wasting our time, are we, discussing it?
No, what's very interesting is that there's a massive swing vote. There's a massive majority of the population who haven't made up their mind yet. I think this is obviously who Cameron was speaking to when he announced his deal as a great, draft deal as a great success this afternoon. And these are the people that he has to convince.
And so what about the rest of you? You mentioned that it has to go to he has to talk to the other European leaders. What do they think of this?
Well, of course, there have been issues on the reform agenda that have been contentious, not least the issue of welfare reform for EU workers here in the UK. But I think as a whole, the EU desperately wants to keep the UK in, because you're looking at a EU that's had a series of crises, from the Eurozone crisis to the migration crisis, and then you finally have a very important member, leaving a club where everyone has only entered, and it would be such an existential blow that I think all other member states would be willing to keep the UK in.
I mean, some people would argue that the sort of European project is at risk at the moment anyway, because of what you mentioned there, the difficulty in handling the migration crisis. If Britain were to leave, do you think that would be it?
It would be a very substantial blow, an existential blow. And in fact, there's been an interesting argument of new Eurosceptic thought saying, well, the whole project's going to crumble sooner or later, so why don't we just stay in, and when it crumbles, then we'll leave, and then we won't have to take the blame for being the ones that instigated the breakdown of the whole institution.
OK, Nina Schick, thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us. Appreciate your time. Thank you.